The other thing that came up this last week that I've got to talk to you folks a little bit about is someone called and they emailed me and asked if a credit card company, if once they sue you to get the judgment for the non-payment of the credit card bill, if they can attach your SSI benefits. And the answer is no, unless. The unless is if you put that check in a bank, they may garnish your bank account. Now, if you didn't have enough money to hire a lawyer to fight the case when they've sued you in the first place, you're sure not going to have enough money to fight to show that that was your SSI money that was in the bank. So that money, in other words, if somebody's got a big judgment against you and you got SSI from some credit cards, don't put your money in the bank unless you want it attached. Because once it becomes converted, they may attach it and you may lose it. You're saying, well, Gary, you're telling somebody how to beat somebody. No, I'm not telling somebody how to beat somebody. What I'm saying to you is these credit card companies loan money to people that they know for a fact doesn't have enough money to pay them back. And they've done it for years and years and years. They're still doing it. I've got a son that unemployed at this point. Do you think a credit card company cares? They sent him a thing in the mail the other day that says $6,000 worth of credit. All you have to do is sign and send this back. He had no means of paying them back. I looked at it and I said, I can't believe this. Haven't they learned anything from what's been going on in this country? And obviously they haven't. The other thing is, if you're sued by a credit card company, you may not owe what they are suing you for. You may have paid them. They don't care. What happens is, old credit card debt from years ago, a bunch of companies went in and bought those debts for pennies on the dollar. Then they have a computer printout showing this debt. They take that computer printout and they start harassing you. Harass. Some of you out there listening right now know what I'm talking about. Sad part is, all they got's a computer printout. They file a suit against you. They have to produce the proof that you owe that money. They have to produce where you signed for it. They have to produce the contracts you entered into, or they can't get a judgment against you. Well, if all they've got is a computer printout, they're not going to go anywhere with that lawsuit. Unless, there's always an unless, right? Unless you didn't file an answer. They send you a summons. It's an old debt that you don't even know if you still owe it or not, because it may be years old, several years old. File an answer to that lawsuit. Even if you have to do it on your own. If you can't afford a lawyer, at least write out something and say, I don't owe this. Make them prove you owe the debt. That is their responsibility. It's called the burden of proof. They have to prove you owe that debt, that you incurred it, and that you didn't pay it.
Since you're on this subject, I got this question this week. It's odd that you brought this up. Husband or wife, doesn't matter, gets a credit card, runs up a bill, doesn't want to tell the spouse, can't pay the bill. Is the other spouse liable for it?
The other spouse, on the question he just asked, would be liable if they get a lawsuit against them and they don't answer it.
Okay.
That's my point. A lawsuit is a serious matter. If someone files a suit against you, a credit card company, file an answer. You have their legal right to file an answer in your own handwriting and file it. Once you file that answer and you ask for a jury trial, then they can't do anything to you until you go in front of a jury. At that time, they have to prove you owe the debt. They can't do it with a computer printout. If it's one of those old debts and all they got's a computer printout, it will never go to trial. They will give up. because they can't prove their case. They can prove their case if you don't file an answer. They will take a judgment against you, and that judgment is as good as gold to them, and they can harass you forever because they now have a judgment. So you have rights. You don't have to be totally at the mercy of these people that say, we're going to file a lawsuit against you. We're going to take what you've got. We think you owe this, but we're not really sure. But we've got a computer printout that says you owe this. And based on our computer printout, we're going to file a lawsuit against you. Anytime, whether it's a civil case of the type I do, which is a personal injury, or it's collect a debt, the burden of proof is on the party that's asking for the money. Now, in a civil action, I have to meet a burden of proof. I have to prove that the person caused the wreck, that I've got sued, and I have to prove to a jury that the person was damaged, that I represent, and that they got hurt. I do that. That's my responsibility. It's also the responsibility of the credit card company when they file a suit against you to prove you owe the debt. And a lot of people have called me over the years and said, I paid this off. I haven't heard from this in years. Or I gave my wife the money and she paid it off.
Yeah.
She may have or she may not have. But the point is, don't sit around and let things just happen to you. Because that was one of the questions that came to me. And again, on this program anymore, we're trying to stay current on the things that matter to you folks on a day in and day out deal. I think it's time for us to take a break, and then we're going to come back to tonight's program.
Well, we've yet to get to the phone number or the fact that we're taking calls. We'll do all that when we come back.
That's right.
See what happens when you ask him questions. He gets all fired up. So we're going to be back with Simply the Law with Gary C. Johnson right after this.
Simply the Law with Gary C. Johnson. We'll be back in just a moment.
My name is Dr. Robert Arts. I'm a professor of education and physics. The reason I like Pikeville College is because we all know each other. It's like we've said a lot of times before, no one's just a number. I'm very passionate about what I teach. I enjoy it. That comes through. I mean, if you walking around talking to a student, they can sense that you enjoy what you're doing. They're going to enjoy it as well because they can see that fun and excitement come out.
Experience excellence. Experience opportunity. Experience Pikeville College.
Welcome back to Simply the Law. I know a lot of people are saying, okay, how could I possibly owe a bill that I'd already paid off? During the break, I was telling you, here's a scenario. You owe $10,000. You call up the credit card company. You say, I'm going to pay it off. What's the payoff? You get it. You put a check in the mail. You forget about it. The check doesn't get there at 39% interest or whatever the interest rate is because you're late. You keep getting in bills from the credit card company. You've swore you're never going to use it again, so you throw them away. Then 2 years later, you find out that you owe another $3,000 or $4,000 because of the interest over a 7-day period.
And penalties.
Penalties and everything like that.
What you've got to do is if you get a payoff on a credit card, you've got to designate a time that payoff is good until. In other words, if you pay it off on the 1st of the month, you've got to say, okay, give me the payoff through the 15th or through the 10th or whatever, so that you make absolutely certain that when they get that check, that it's current, the payoff is. That's the only way you can do that. In other words, if you get the payoff on the 1st and you send them a check on the 1st, it won't be the payoff by the time they process your check.
That's right.
So don't do that. Get a date. Is this good through this payoff you're giving me? When is it terminate? Is this through, do I have 10 days to get it to you? Be sure you do that. The other thing that I want to talk to some of you folks, and most of you folks this won't have anything to do with, and I get off on these. By the way, I'm at the office. We're pre-recording this, and if you want to call and you've been in a car wreck or hurt or something, give me a call. I'm there. It's 800-337-4002. We haven't even got to the computer because there's so many things that I've run into this last week.